Yes. Hi, everyone. This is Daniel Gimario here again for our regular monthly full moon video blog. And I'm joined here today with Lizzie Moon, who's on our council as the resource steward. And we're going to have a conversation about what I think are number of extremely important topics. This is like piggybacking on a lot of the work I've done over the last few years, which will go through this topic, what really inspired me to have this conversation was a gathering that I was presenting at in Sedona when I had brought up a topic that no one else had brought up. And it riveted the people that I was sharing it with, and it's really something that we really do need to talk about as astrologers, which is what is the implication of the current large language models and AI on uh, human-centered astrology. And this will be like the underlying theme of what we're going to be discussing, but we're going to approach it from a number of angles. So it also occurred to me this would be a really good time to go back into the shadow of Aquarius, which is the sign of Aquarius, not the constellation, which is Pluto in Aquarius. And back on October 13th, that is when Pluto went direct and will not go back into Capricorn. So it's fully in Aquarius now until 2043. And so our view on this is that whatever sign Pluto is in is revealing to us the shadow of that sign. And so, well, these are all kinds of things. Let's put up that slide so you can get an idea of what we're going to be doing here today. AI, human-centered astrology in the shadow of Aquarius. Now, as I mentioned, okay, here's our intent. As always, in any of these presentations, anything I ever do, I always like to give the larger context of our times. We'll go back into what is the shadow of Aquarius, the nature of real astrology or human-centered astrology, and the danger of AI astrology. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, this is piggybacking on a lot of stuff that myself and the school has done over the last number of years. And so if anyone wants to research this topic more, we've listed here where there's a 4-part webinar series, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius, What Again? Aquarius Shadow and Gifts, Daniel's investigation of the U.S. chart series. We're not going to have time in our conversation today to go into the U.S. chart. I've done that a number of times recently. So these are all on our website, and you can find them under the Founders Corner. And then I have this whole series of articles that I've written under the theme of technosis. You know, essentially means the kind of mental illness that can happen through current technology. And most of, well, there's been a lot of stuff just in the last week or two that are going into this rather deeply about how there's a sort of a reciprocal relationship between the amount of time people spend on digital technology and the diminishing of their cognitive abilities. And I guess one of the themes I'm wanting to bring forth here is the large language models. What is the current expressions of AI, whether it's Gemini or Grok or the Chinese one or OpenAI. this is not the same thing. It's a qualitative difference between just having a research tool or a better version of a calculator, you know. So we have to be very careful when we just think, oh, this is the natural progress of technology. And so then we have one of the articles is also something which will go into our conversation, which is currently called the Sentient World Simulation, which I was writing back a few years ago about the global digital brain and Kali Yuga's facsimile of God, the simulacrum of God, which is being created through digital tokenization of literally everything that exists in on the planet. You know, I mean, everything, every plant, every mineral being turned into a digital facsimile or simulacrum, and which then will end up be um, replacing actually the our organic reality. So continuing. And these are just some other important articles that give the background of our conversation. This is out of chaos comes order, but by what means is actually related to the larger context of our time, which is the end of Kali Yuga and the end and the beginning of an entire processional cycle. And if you put those things together, then it's not linear progress we're talking about, but it's the deepest descent of spirit into materialism, into matter. And one way or another that will be composted. Will it be a natural turning over, or is it something that is being engineered to create chaos so that a artificial order is placed on it? And then here we have, of course, the purpose and mission of the turning of the ages mystery school, which will be woven through our whole discussion here today about why we even have our school, why are we dedicated and committed to person to person, what I would call real astrology. So the issue here is that with the large language models, now that an individual can go beyond Alexis or Siri and have their own individual AI coach or friend or advisor, that is happening now a lot out there. People go directly to that and say, well, I'm in a Saturn return. What does that mean? Or they're using one of 100 different apps in order to get their session. I want to use an analogy here, because certainly our school is not anti-technology. I like to think of our school as being more of a neo-Luddite school. And an example I can give of that is, so I remember back when I was learning the night sky, I had a cardboard sky wheel. So I would look at the sky, learn what I could from the sky, and then I would check it on the cardboard wheel. Now, how you can have an app that does a better job of that, that is showing the sky through the app. But unfortunately, what has happened is now so many people go there first when it should simply be a tool to see whether you're actually learning it with your senses. And so I'm using the same analogy for, like, you can use and I certainly use it, use earlier versions of AI, Google search or whatever, as a research tool, but it's designed in order to assist in cognitive, creative work, not to do it for you. And yes, Lizzie.
I just wanted to point out too in this article how even in the second paragraph you're already saying a longtime client during a session informed me that she had asked ChatGPT about her Uranus cycle and it dutifully gave her dates and a mainstream interpretation that freaked her out. So if AI is really just gathering up all the different articles about astrology, all the different interpretations of astrology, and somehow giving her the one interpretation that it comes up with, it's also, how much of the rest of her chart is it taking into account? And that's where shamanic astrology takes the whole picture into account, and then also relies on the transmission that comes through in that soul to soul contact with connection with each other. So, you know, I don't personally use it, but I think I'd probably be aghast at some of the interpretations that it would give people. So fair warning there.
Well, and also that back then it hadn't actually reached the level that's happening right now, where basically what the AI guide does is mirror back to you in your own personal bubble chamber what it is that you want to hear it say.
Back to the global digital brain. But anyway, so yeah, just wanted to point that out. And you have another list of resources here that contribute to your
Whenever I
understanding.
bring up this topic, there have been individuals to say, "Well, where do you get your information?" You know, because I'm a Capricorn moon, and I tend to like to get information from all sides, not just to be locked in a bubble chamber. But I guess you could say that this is my favorite group of people, and they're all kind of looking at it from an angle that's not partisan, that's not right versus left or blue versus red or good white hats or black hats or anything like that, but are looking at it from a higher perspective. And I recommend any one of these hugely, and particularly their work on AI and what AI actually is, and what it actually means for maintaining our organic, authentic humanity. Not to drift into the deepest descent of spirit into matter, which is the digitalization of everything. And I do mean everything, which is what the plan is. And it's even, well in place here in 2025. Um, uh, any one of these is worthwhile to give you some background. In fact, this the one at the top is just came out a few days ago, and it has numerous links and resources regarding digital twins, the sentient world simulation, what 5G into 6G really means, the hive mind, all of these different topics that will be woven into our discussion today. And we can put that up later if we have time and take a look at that article and all the different topics if we miss any of our topics today. So maybe now, just for a moment, as we said at the beginning, always like to look at the larger context, right? So back in the 1980s, 1990s, a number of us became aware that we were in a time period when the cosmic crosses in the sky, and I'm referring to the larger background, the sort of the face of the clock. How do you tell what time is it now in the greater calendrics and greater cosmology? And we became aware that the solstices were lining up with these two crosses. The two crosses are the intersection point between the Bull and Twins constellation and between the Archer and the Scorpion constellations. And based on some research I did, I actually got the information from an astronomer about the date of 1998 being the center point of the Great Turning. We call it the Great Turning, the end and the beginning of a 26,000 year cycle. However, it was through the work of Bibhu Dev Mishra and his incredible 2024 book called Yuga Shift that came through, in a sense, the proof I was looking for that actually it's not just a seasonal change we're in, but it's the end and the beginning of the entire 26,000 year cycle. I'm just noticing you might be frozen there, Lizzie.
I don't know.
Your face hasn't moved for quite some time.
Oh, really? Well,
Oh,
I'm
there you go. Now
moving
it,
on my end. Okay. That'll be
but
weird.
it, but you were still hearing me and everything, right? Okay.
Yes.
So what he was able to do, and I always had a suspicion that was the case, based on his research, he was able to show how the Yuga cycles from India exactly correspond with the precessional cycle. And we have there's a slide we have that we can show you what I'm talking about here, but it was actually his research that for me was the final proof that it's not just a seasonal change, but it's the end and the beginning of an entire precessional cycle at least, because it's at the end of Kali Yuga that it's the only time period actually in the 26,000 year cycle, and I'm referring to the last 5 or 6,000 years, where linear processes, linear quote history dominates, as opposed to cycles, which is what global humanity had known for a long time, and where the technology became so much about control rather than working together with the natural world. One can actually bring in the views of Steiner here that in other ages or in other yugas, the physical universe was not quite the same. There was less dense, which would make sense of why some of the crystal technologies or magnetic technologies, ones that we can only get clues from when you read about the Atlantean material, and even before, that other technologies were created a whole different kind of quote civilization, not the type of technology that we have now, where to leave the atmosphere, you have to have metal spaceships that are burning huge amounts of fuel that are to leave the gravity. When there are other technologies that exist. So we're actually at what is many think, oh, we must be in the highest technological progress, when in fact, if you look at it from a wider angle lens, it's actually a devolution. And in fact, I personally believe that the digitalization of everything is the deepest descent of spirit into matter. It's turning consciousness into a thing. And in fact, even in our last 100 years, there has been a conscious attempt by academia to eliminate spirit and soul. I mean, it was about 1920 that ether was written out. And then meanwhile, there's the materialistic view that consciousness is simply the product of the brain, rather than what mystics and perennialists have known for thousands of years, that consciousness precedes matter. And who we really are sparks of that divine consciousness, and the one reality as it's described in Hermeticism. So in a sense, we're like in this hologram. But we have a connection to that which has created the hologram, which now it's like these technocrats, the technocratic global world order. The world run by just a small group of technicians, is actually the true original meaning of Lucifer or Luciferian, which basically means trying to be God without God.
So
Which,
I find that mm, you know, like sardonic, laughable, right? Because, okay, we've seen the Yuga chart, the circle, right? And we've been down here in the bottom in the density, of of Kali Yuga. And so as we're coming back up the side of the circle, right, we're rising back up in the Satya Yuga and on to the Golden Age and all this stuff. Okay, well, so this rise in consciousness, this awakening, the enlightenment is going to happen. It just happens in the cyclical nature of our reality, is that we're going to rise back up, so to speak. And we're all coming online, a lot more channeling. But it's so, I guess, lack of any understanding of that process, or a very deep a knowledge of that process. So there's two options. Are they trying to keep it from happening, meaning the bifurcation has happened and they're
right,
keeping us in the density, or can they just not dream up any other way that the
right.
human is going to rise in consciousness other than machines and wires and all the big data centers they're building and all of that? They It's like they can't have faith that it's going to happen anyway, or that
Well,
the
what they
other
did,
technology is going to come back online. But anyway.
well, another side of the story. I mean, to have a really balanced view that it's really only in the Kali Yuga time, or we could say the last 4 or 5 thousand years, where the development of rational mind, left brain, that would separate humans from their connection to land and sky and from the living earth, um, where it becomes possible for the sovereign individual to choose heart, love, soul, spirit. So that does not happen before that development. And in other presentations that other research and articles that I've written, it's the way in which Rajar's worldview and Steiner's really mesh beautifully. That there was a point in time within Kali Yuga, just around 500 BC, which is the first time that individual horoscopes even existed. Before that, except for exceptional individuals, possibly, the majority of human beings lived in I won't use the word harmony, but in participation mystique with the world around them. They could actually see the plasma beings. They could see angels and demons and whatever. But then as the whole thing densified, then that allowed for the development of an individual self that actually, it's a double-edged sword, because if you have an individual self, you can actually then say, I can be God, I'm God without God, right? Or you can actually choose to be fully human. You can choose to have a heart and spirit and soul and choose, because as the pundits said 2,000 years ago, it's actually in Kali Yuga that it's most possible to truly open the heart, because at a time period where everybody's heart is open, it's no big deal.
Right. And that reminds me, as you were saying that, of, at the saying, the scripture, whatever that says that we were given free will. Well, is that why we were given free will at this time, so that we could choose,
So we can choose,
and at
right?
other times it wasn't like necessary even, you know. So yeah.
So this larger context needs to be taken into account. I mean, there's wonderfully great astrology going on out there, even noticing things like, oh yeah, wow, it's the first year we found, going back thousands of years, that 4 outer planets go into new signs. There's a large number of things that people can write about it. You can go into the bizarrely strange, overwhelming stuff that's happening to the U.S. chart. The Neptune opposition, the Uranian return in 2027, the fifth Chiron return, 20th Jupiter return, the Pluto return. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. including the time period now of the Jupiter transit through Cancer. That's all incredibly useful and valid stuff. But you have to place it within this larger context of where the larger cosmological cycles are. And while there's no proof of this at the moment, but there's an arising intuition people are having that the solar system itself is moving into alignment with the galactic center plane, and which then actually creates a different situation at galactic center where it becomes like a central sun. So we're talking about not just something that's happening in on our planet and our solar system, but it's happening galaxy wide. You know,
Oh, you mean as in as above, so below?
like that. Well, I mean, there's so many odd things along those lines, like the fact that it's 25,800 light years to galactic center, which just happens to be the number of years in a precessional cycle. Anyway, that's so this larger context allows us to know that we're at a time of massive acceleration and recapitulation. And as I didn't I didn't come up with this, I heard it from someone else, that is time actually really speeding up, or is it coming to an end?
Mm-hmm.
And even back in the 70s and 80s, from Terence McKenna to other individuals, you know, they were basically assuming that around this time period, data would be increasing so fast that it would reach a singularity. You know, that word singularity is now used in a different way by the transhumanists, which is now they're using that word to mean when what is it? The large language models reach sentience, and then will be more conscious, or more. I won't say conscious. I don't believe that, but that will have will be more intelligent or more powerful than humans, right? You know, and so that brings up questions that science fiction writers wrote back in the 20s and 30s. Can AI be willing to kill to avoid being shut down? And I'm not just making stuff up there. That's something which even in the last year there have been stories that have surfaced by AI scientists that leave Google or leave OpenAI because they're saying, wait a second, they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what they're doing, because actually whatever large language model that exists is the creation of someone. You know, so in other words, how many of us are ever asking, what spiritual initiations has Sam Altman had? What spiritual initiations has Elon Musk had? You know, because basically all of these different creations are their babies. So how are they raising their babies if they have any? And so basically you need to have it as a tool of genuine, authentic humanity. They have to be brought up with spiritual initiation and with higher consciousness, which is what the ancient Sat Yuga knowledge was. You couldn't be a king or a leader or a respected elder without having taken spiritual initiation or been in a mystery school.
Yes, your thoughts.
Um, one of the things I started writing about a few years ago was this development of what is now called the sentient world simulation. It already exists. It's like a double, I get the word that is, we can put up the definition of simulacrum, which actually exists globally as a digital simulation of the entire Earth, but then it also, oh, here, I guess we should go back to that at some point too. This is a word, very important. The word's been around since the 1600s, but it certainly applies to now. Copies that represent things that either have no original or, and this is most important, whose original is no longer relevant. The replacement of the organic with the digital twin. And at this point, with all the data gathering that's been happening, actually, from what I understand from my own sources, that every person on the planet already has a digital twin. And so that's what they're doing with the data they collect. It's not to make your life more efficient or to for security or any of the rest of it. It's to harvest the data. I'm not the only one who first said it. You know, data is the new oil. You know, so whoever, in fact, even when Yuval Harari was in an interview, um, uh, he was asked, well, what is the religion of the future? What is the spiritual, what spirituality will be there in the future? And he said, oh, it'll be called dataism. The individual has the most amount of data will be God. That's the belief of the Silicon Valley cults. Mhm.
Well, I just was watching at the end of Dr. Anna's article here that you cited, and I couldn't put the whole title, it's a long title, but that's the start of it. The video at the end of that, where the people, I guess they're at these conferences where they get together and talk about how great their new technology is and what it's going to be able to do. Well, they're saying it, they're doing it. Isn't it going to be great how we're going to be able to create the digital twin and then basically control the human through the twin?
Right.
I mean,
So,
just because they can, I'm sure they won't, though, right?
no, oh no, no. Well, it's what's that statement, which is an example of the way the scientific left brain or scientism left brain technocrat way they think. You know, well, we can do it, so we should do it. That's progress. And so my response to that is just because you can doesn't mean you should. You know, and as Steiner warned us a long time ago that who was not anti-technology, but he basically said that if the moral and ethical values are not developed along with it, then there's great danger to what a human being really is.
Yeah.
Let's just go back for a moment to that chart of the comparison. I just want you to be aware of this, and you can reference different videos and different articles that go into this in more detail. This is lining up the astrological ages with the different yugas. And then also I've added in here what the different precessional stars were at various points, you know, Vega 12 or 13,000 years ago, Deneb during the previous golden age. And I've also put in here some references to the geological time with the Younger Dryas and with the maximum glaciation during the Ice Age time. Um, and also the information about the four worlds or the five worlds. You know, the Hopi have four worlds, and the Toltecs have five worlds. But in both systems, they were at the end and the beginning of, you know, where it all turns over. You know, after the fourth age is the first age. After the fifth world is the first world. And just beyond the scope of what we're trying to bring forth now, but most of these topics are covered in some of the other references that we've shared with you here. And you can see here in fact, you were pointing it out, I believe, that where we are at 2025, and this whole thing is calibrated to the end and the beginning of the age of Aquarius, the constellation, not the sign, which happens to be 1998. And then according to Bibu, then the end of Kali Yuga was March equinox of this year in 2025. It might be useful at this point to just, before bringing this into a more practical approach to why we have our school, is to talk a little bit more about this, the shadow of Aquarius. So as mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, whatever sign Pluto is in is pointing out its shadow. What, as much idealism has been over the years projected on to Aquarius, the sign of Aquarius, the shadow of it is collectivism. Now, what's very intriguing, I am a person with Pluto in Leo. And so I go back to a previous time when there was a great deal of glamour about the beginning of the age of Aquarius. And that was, of course, the mid-late 60s. You know, now the thing is, my generation with Pluto and Leo, when you think of the signs, they work as a resonant polarity. I mean, you can't have Aquarius without Leo, you can't have Leo without Aquarius. But if it splits off into just Aquarius, then it's understandable that it might drift into, you know, the shadow even of democracy, you know, mob rule, you know, the collectivism. And while if you go back to the other side of the resonant polarity, it's not for nothing that the Pluto, the boomers, you know, the Pluto and Leo generation had a negative expression, which is the me generation. You know, so you can have the extreme either way. But if you put them both together, then the ideals of the sign of Aquarius blended together with sovereignty, which is really what Leo is about, then you're less likely to shift to drift into the shadow of Aquarius, and that shadow is, of course, the hive mind, the Borg, the the egregore, the putting everybody into a simulation world brain, which is not the real thing anyway. In fact, I made I have a suspicion that that actually they've even created a digital expression of the Akashic records.
Hmm.
You know, so
Well,
that
and another shadow of Aquarius is light polarization, and this is what I hear um, in the, what shall we call it, spiritual community, new cage community, that, well, but if AI is a mirror of us, or if AI is picking up all of our energy, then we better be feeding it with good energy, and we're going to be in there interacting with it and making sure that we're giving it the light, right? Um, and I can't help but, we visit archaeological sites, ancient sites, and there's a big house here close by where I live in Arizona, right? And I couldn't help but just feel like I felt the walls and just knew that the people building the technology of that day, a tall house for the king so that he could see the rivers and the wars and all this.
yes,
Okay, building the technology of that day, they didn't know they were building it to their own demise.
yeah, yeah.
That they thought it was all great, you know?
What and now, of course, digital IDs. Oh, that'll make it so much easier. Digital money, guaranteed, yeah, basic minimum income or whatever. That'll make our we don't have to work. Life, you know, it'll be so much better. When in fact people are giving their consent to enter a neo-feudal enslavement.
And unfortunately, like, they're making it bad for all of us because they're really ushering it in. It's like it's just getting slipped in
Mhm.
all of
Oh,
these
this is so
ways.
cool. Wow,
Yeah.
all I have to do is scan my face. All they have to do is I put my wrist up against something and it opens. How cool is that? I mean, no, that's part of the willing compliance of being ushered into a control program. Now, of course, what is the solution here? Well, I would say the solution is to do everything you can not to go for the digital ID, to, as long as it's possible, you use cash or use barter to, and probably more than anything, it's to decentralize. A book that was very inspiring to me, one of the best books I think written, is called The Dawn of Everything, by David Graeber, who describes in great detail that it's not inevitable, it's not progress to develop a global state. That's a, it's either a choice or it's a manipulation in order to move in that direction. There are many times in the history of global humanity where other decisions were taken. In fact, the Native American culture, most of the nations of North America and Canada and Central America, particularly North America and Canada, they laughed at anyone who thought they were the king or thought they were the leader. You know, I mean, they would sometimes give them a little island and say, you can pretend to be king there, but we're not paying any attention to you. It was a very egalitarian culture, and this seems to be the case in many other places, like in Hawaii. Before the Tahitians came up and imposed hierarchy there, it was a place where there was very little difference between the elders and the elite, quote unquote elite, and the ordinary people. You know, so humans have done it differently. It's not inevitable to be going in this direction. That makes me wonder that that there's a great deal of planning behind this that is not what would happen with natural chaos. You know, I mean, in original Greek philosophy, they would, before patriarchy, it was the statement, out of chaos comes the world, as a natural process that happens at various points in the great cycles. But then what if you try to manipulate that for your own purpose? I got a piece of information from a friend of mine that the, the, the current, there were two authors of the book, The Fourth Turning, and one died, the real genius behind that work. And the one who's currently alive is apparently, according to him, has been feeding the fourth turning information into the CIA. So basically they're using that information in order to, in a sense, manipulate the fourth turning the way they want it to go, if you follow them.
Of course, because they can't help themselves. Oh gosh, I just was thinking about something that you said. Now I lost it. Okay, keep talking.
So how
Oh,
how does this, yes, go
I
ahead.
remember the other thing I was going to say is a solution is something that we really stress in our school is gathering in person, is soul to soul connection, and and getting out under the night sky. Yes, there's some satellites flying around, but the stars are still there, and and our earthly experience of that is the same as it's been, I guess, for thousands of years, right? And so that can just really keep us grounded and keep us, human and
Well,
connected to the earth.
our actual psyche, as above, so below, is the same patterning as what our senses see in the night sky. That's and it was the project of some of our further back, you know, the more ancient civilizations, which was to bring heaven down to earth. And
Do
so
you
you would,
remember? Do you remember the little girl we met? I know you do. In New Mexico just last month, right? When she said, and she had heard her mom talking about astrology, and she had the most brilliant way of saying it, I thought, out of the mouths of babes, right? And she said, "The planets are doing the same thing you are."
right, that was always
You
fantastic.
know, like there's the above and below. Perfect.
So our school is committed to being a human-centered school. And actually, again, not total Luddite. I mean, so therefore, if you use an app, or if you go, I wonder what Grok is going to say about my Saturn return. Well, maybe that will prompt you to actually have a real astrology reading, you know. And that's the only way that I find myself supportive, even of my previous work that I've done on apps. And there is one that's well known out there that I did the groundwork on the philosophy and the structure and the paradigm behind it. Go ahead, use that, but hopefully it would motivate you to actually get a real session with a trained person who sits with you soul to soul. And it's not the astrologer telling you how it is. They're helping you tune in to what your actual mission and purpose statement is. Uh, so our view is that if you know your life purpose, that it really does not matter what happens out there. This whole thing could be composted in the next hour. We don't know, but if you have a connection to your divine spark, your spirit, your soul, the depth of your heart, then it really doesn't matter because you're fine. All is well. That's the celestial transmission. The universe is unfolding as it should, and you are an eternal being. And however, you're not going to survive forever as a chip, as in some simulacra digital brain surrounding the Earth. It's even the hijack of the original ideas behind the noosphere, that there would actually be what Rajar called the planetarization of consciousness. That's the planetarization of consciousness, not some digital noosphere, which is then a space fence and a digital prison. Anyway, we're talking about some pretty heavy stuff here, but I think that it relates very much to our commitment as a school to maintain that humanness and not use AI. Uh, Everything you'll see on our site is going to be written by humans, warts and mistakes at all. The creative process exists. I mean, I think I wrote this at one point. I didn't make this up. I got it from some other writer. Um, AI, artificial intelligence, that's an oxymoron. So therefore, I like to think of AI as authentic intelligence.
Right,
Right.
right, as opposed to by machine. Yeah, and it reminds me too of the interview, which, just a little plug for the interview you did with Bibu Dev Misra, which is also on YouTube. So go watch that. But there was just a point in it that he said, and if you don't make it through the big reset or the big composting or whatever, you'll just come back when it's already better. You
That's
know,
right.
so I
And,
just have to stay light about it in, some
and
ways.
that's exactly what Steiner also taught. That if this becomes truly a place where you cannot be connected to spirit and soul, well, then you'll die and come back when it's revitalized. When it's prime Earth again.
Right. And I just heard someone even mention again another scripture that said something about, and I'm not a Bible expert or anything, but it was interesting what it said as we're talking about this, that that there would be a time when like men would wish for death and couldn't die. Well, that would be being kept alive by some chip or by some whatever, right? And so there are worse things than death, you
Right.
know? Yeah. So
Without question. The revolutionaries of the past have always known that. The ones that would stand up against fascism, would stand up against uh, state control.
yeah, it's
They're
not
these,
to die on it.
all of these technocrats, I mean, they're just simply saying we are the gods, and we are now the state. Just as in fascism, it's like there are no individuals. You just the state is God. Well, now it's the technocratic technocracy that, well, we now are the wise ones, and we will be able to manage the world, and you don't have to have anything. We'll just allocate what social credit system and everything else, but we could just go on and on about
I
this
know.
conversation. But for me, the main point is to say that of our dedication and commitment to keeping astrology human-centered, and to be very careful that you're farming that out to large language models.
Yes. As well as anything, any of your connection and creative ability and all of that. That's just where I am on it. Obviously, we're using technology. We're on Zoom today. You know,
Right.
we're going to post it on YouTube, and most of our school is online because we're international. That's how we meet and do all that. But we create it ourselves and we talk to each other. And what also happens in a session is that intuitive transmission and the download that we get from Great Mystery or that comes through that is not going to come through on an app or a pre-loaded model. So
Or
irreplaceable.
like I've heard individuals say, "Oh my gosh, my AI counselor read my mind."
Right?
Indeed,
Yes.
yes.
No, thank you. Yeah. Anyway, that's me. So if it's
So
going to
we can
happen, it's going to happen when I don't notice it. That's for sure.
so what we got coming up in the school actually it'll happen before the newsletter goes out, so it's that branch meeting with no point even mentioning that right now. But we have some solstice seminars coming up, which will be our yearly look ahead to 2026. And then next year, there's going to be another meetup at Faywood Hot Springs in September. And then we have, our eclipse event happening in Spain, which will actually be our relationship and sacred marriage course in combination with the eclipse that's happening through Western Spain. So we've just recently posted some information about that and about the solstice events. And then we, of course, always value our membership, because we're supported by our members. And also, we have still no, I think might be, yeah, by midnight tonight in America, we still are running that special on our cosmology course 4, which uh, I did with Gemini Brett. And it's an awesome course. It puts together a lot of the larger context and that we're mentioning about here. Um, and I guess that's about it. And we wanted to maybe end with several entertaining things here.
Yeah, I
Couple
always
of
like to, again, I like to keep that little sardonic humor going because what else are you
right.
going to do? You know, laugh about it every once in a while. So we'll share some memes with you. I don't know if you want to speak to this one, but
I particularly love this one on the far right. Humanity researches AI. Humanity perfects AI. AI perfects itself. AI enslaves humanity. Solar flare disables AI as humanity worships sun god, right?
oh gosh, maybe again, everything's cyclical. Maybe that's what we're doing again. You
Mm.
know, these are great. Hmm.
I particularly love this one, and I'm sorry if there's anybody out there that happen to be Elon fanboys, but anyway, but this could apply to some of the other ones too, Sam Altman or
Hmm.
Larry Ellison. I doubt if there's anybody listening to this call that have them as their heroes,
Peter
but anyway,
Thiel.
and
Yeah.
then and then we said the world would melt if they weren't slaves in our social credit system. Then we made the brain chip guy their new hero.
Oh, those reptilians.
There we have it. And of course, just in the last week or two is the news of all the layoffs. I mean, they're already full on to replace so many thousands and thousands of humans with AI and robots, right?
Again,
So
that Dr. Anna article really points out a lot of those different things that are happening. Here we go. Stay human.
that's our final statement. There we have it. Yes. Well, I hope this has been not too challenging. Or actually, that's not true. We like to be provocative and to get people to think more deeply about these things. And as you can see, newsletter memberships. We'll have a full moon membership. Sorry, newsletter that comes out here shortly. We have 2 free newsletters a month, seminars, articles, blogs, in-person gatherings, and more. So thank you, Lizzie. I know that we love to collaborate about these kinds of things, and be able to talk about these topics together is really important. So,
Yeah.
and thanks
Thank
for
you for having me. There, and again, like you said, we could go on forever, because there's so many examples of what's happening, and I don't know, to me,
well, definitely
warnings.
give us your feedback. I mean, there's ways that you can do that. I know you can make comments on this when it gets posted on YouTube, but also from our community page, you can make comments.
I'll just say too, we just had a member join the school who was really, there's a lot of swimming energies going around, whether you're watching politics or not, or whether you're worried about the world condition, whatever it is, a lot going on. And was really looking for a group or a way to stay grounded in and knowing about all of this. To me, it gives me comfort. It doesn't scare me more. It helps me go, oh, I see why this is like this, and I can kind of throw my hands up and go, oh yeah, Kali Yuga, there you go. But she really found some grounding being in our school, right? And being able to be on the call and see each other's faces and have real conversations. So, yeah, it's really helpful. And there's a lot available for a premium membership,
Yeah.
as well. So, very good. Thank you.
All right. Well, for those of you who like these video blogs, see you all next month. All right. Bye.
Yeah, goodbye.